Introducing Accessibility to Existing Designs, presented by Katie Gleason, web designer at WP Engine.
Hello, thank you for joining me. My name is Katie Gleason, and I am going to be talking to you all today about how to introduce accessibility to an existing design team, how we did it at WP Engine, and giving you some tips on how you can do it with your own teams as well. So, like I said before, my name is Katie. I have short blonde hair, I wear glasses. They have green frames, but the frames are really thin, can't really see them. I'm currently wearing a tan short sleeve button down shirt, and I have a sleeve of tattoos on my right hand, which you might see as I use my hands to talk a lot. So let's get into it. I'm a web designer with the storefront marketing team at WP Engine. I came into design by way of psychology degree. And I've been with WP Engine for a couple years now. At about this point last year, actually, my team identified accessibility as an internal priority and took steps to head up this accessibility initiative within our storefront site design. And I led that project. So I'm going to give you a little info on what we did and hopefully give you some tips on what you can do as well. So the first thing we identified when we were talking about accessibility was that, the storefront marketing team already had an existing design system that was being used for ads, was being used for the site, and had approval that went way over just our team. So, while that design system wasn't made with accessibility in mind, we realized that, we would have much more luck trying to find accessible solutions within that system than trying to change the system entirely. That did add a layer of difficulty, though. The second thing we identified, our second hurdle, was that our team, and me specifically, I really lacked the knowledge to identify and solve accessibility problems and issues that existed on our site. I had always had a passion about accessibility, but I had never had any certifications, any training, and, I didn't really know where to start. And then our third big hurdle was that accessibility itself is a lot more complicated than this black and white view of checking boxes off of a list. While there is a standard of, various qualifications sites and designs have to meet to be accessible, accessibility is about a lot more than that. And I wanted our accessibility initiative to be stronger than just checking boxes. So the first hurdle that I tackled was education. And with the support of my team, I was able to find a comprehensive introductory course called Introduction to Web Accessibility with W3CX, and really educate myself on the why of accessibility as well as the what. So who are we designing for? Why is it important that we make these things accessible? For this initial accessibility push, you do not have to become an expert in accessibility. That's not going to happen overnight. It's certainly not going to happen in 2, 4, 6 weeks. This initial education is the very beginning of what I consider to be a lifelong learning process. I'm about a year in and I'm still learning new things every day. And I plan on learning new things every day for the rest of the time that I do accessible design, which hopefully is a long time. So I really benefited from learning the whys of accessibility through this course, because it not only helped me better explain solutions and situations to my team, but then also later on down the line, when I'm presenting designs outside of the team, it helps, it helps give a good reason for accessibility besides just this is the right thing to do or this is the right way to do it. Neither of which are really strong arguments in and of themselves. So following my education, we did an initial audit of our site, which, the best way to do accessibility testing with users is to actually do testing with users with disabilities, and get feedback on how they view your site. Since our accessibility initiative was really an internal push, that wasn't an option. We didn't have the support of, a dedicated research team to be able to take the time and find the people for this initial accessibility audit. So right there, that was a hurdle that we had to get past, and we had to find something that, while it may not have been necessarily an equivalent testing method, it was in the name of something is better than nothing. It was a start. And so for our first audit, we identified our main buyer journey, the homepage of our website, and then the plans and pricing page. We wanted to break it into a manageable chunk, because trying to audit an entire website on your first go around is really overwhelming. And to keep ourselves on track, we wanted to be able to take it in bite-sized, manageable chunks. So as the tester for this audit, I ended up using a lot of tools to be able to try and accurately capture various different experiences of our site. Some of the tools I've listed on here, some of the tools I used were Stark for color contrast, and also seeing what various types of color blindness might look like on our site. Wave is really good for like a macro view of the site as a whole, and identifying potential accessibility issues, such as when images are missing alt text. Axe DevTools was something I would use to turn off the CSS and the visuals on the site, so I could just see that semantic structure in place and determine, like, does this logically make sense? You can obviously use the keyboard and tab through the whole page, make sure that makes sense. And then I use a Mac, and Apple has some good accessibility settings where you can actually test various different accessible experiences through their software. So I used that as well. Following our audit, I compiled a list of all of the issues that I had identified in my original audit, and we got together as a team. And there were some issues that were fairly black and white, like color contrast. There's not really like a middle ground there. It either meets the minimum requirement or it doesn't. So those were fairly straightforward to fix. Since we could find other colors within our existing design system that were accessible and met those color contrast requirements. What we had to do, though, is we had to identify these accessibility gray areas, areas where there may not necessarily be one correct answer. For example, alt text on icons. You can put alt text on icons, but you also, if they're decorative, you don't necessarily have to. So we kind of had to go into that thinking about how can we provide an equivalent experience for all of our users, not necessarily the exact same experience. So that's kind of where the research comes in. Once we identified those gray areas, I did a lot of research on potential solutions. I brought these solutions to the team, and we agreed on our team's design treatment for these gray areas and what we wanted to do moving forward, which I then documented in a Google Slides document, along with visuals to help not only potential new members on the team understand, but also people outside the team who may not have been there from jump and may not have seen everything that we were going through. And the last thing that I feel like is really important as far as creating your accessible design framework is identifying a process to report new additions to this framework and to this document. Are you going to have a Google form? Are you going to become the point person that everybody comes to every time they have some sort of accessibility question? And if that's the case, how are you going to record all of these questions so that you can get to them in a timely manner without having to interrupt your day every single time? So these are all, questions you have to ask yourself and things you have to decide to help maintain this framework. Once you've built the framework and you've achieved the goals you set out to achieve, you've redesigned some pages and you're feeling great about yourself, you may be wondering, okay, what's next? How do I keep this moving? How do I maintain this forward momentum? And so, like I mentioned just a few moments ago, you're going to want to continue updating this framework. As you continue to go through just your regular day-to-day design work, you'll find other either existing accessible gray areas, or potentially your team might want to introduce a new component like an animation or a video onto a page. And you're like, okay, how are we going to address this accessibility wise? So, by maintaining that framework and that documentation, you make it really easy for anybody to use accessible design components and make sure things are done correctly the first time. I've also found it really beneficial to start introducing accessibility into the reasoning portion of my design presentations. Like I mentioned when I was talking about the education, the why behind accessibility is super important, not just for your own benefit, but also for the benefit of those around you. Why is accessible design important to a business case? Who is accessible? Who is this accessible design going to be helping? Really says a lot more than just, we did it this way because it's accessible. People want to understand and people want to grow their own knowledge. And if you can really kind of help evangelize accessibility within your organization, you'd be shocked at how many people you can get on board. And the last one, my last piece of advice would be to pick the right times to really dig your heels in as far as accessibility. Similar to a lot of feedback you get on designs, sometimes the accessible option isn't going to be the one that everybody likes the most. And so in those situations, you have options. You can research potential other accessible designs. You can, dig your heels in and say, no, this is the best way to do it, and I'm going to stand by that. Or you can say, you know what, okay, we can have tool tips on this page, but I am going to go and find a better way to present the information you want to present in an accessible way. So whether you are making a stand right then and there, or Going back to your own personal drawing board, you kind of have to make those decisions on the fly and on your own, with the support of your team, obviously. So just in closing, accessibility for me is a never-ending journey of education and growth. I've found a lot of joy and a lot of fulfillment in the beginning of my accessibility journey. And something I would recommend for everybody is to find a community of people like all of you who are passionate about accessibility, whether that's an accessible design group within your company, or just a group passionate about accessibility anywhere, like Facebook, LinkedIn. It doesn't really matter. Just find a group of people who are also trying to further their education and knowledge and growth, and y'all can help each other and grow together. I really find that that's incredibly beneficial. So thank you so much for your time today. And if you have any questions, I am in the chat and should be able to answer those. Feel free to find me on LinkedIn and we can chat more. So thanks, guys.